Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Ichiwama, and welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, the Star Wars podcast that goes everywhere from Endor to Coruscant and anywhere in between. I am one of your hosts, Jedi Master John Mills, and of course, with me is my dear friend, my loyal compatriot, my, no beard. No, but you broke the Jedi Master code here, Master Rushing. Jedi Master Matthew Rushing, you have no beard. This has broken the Jedi code. You must have facial hair if you're a Jedi Master.
I beg to differ. Mace Windu, no facial hair.
Dangerously close to the dark side. There you go. There's the difference.
I'm just saying. You know, Yoda doesn't have facial hair.
He has a few whiskers by Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. There are also some
least.
female members of the Jedi Council that don't have facial hair. So I'm just
saying. I feel like you're nitpicking right now. I feel like you're nitpicking my sound theory about Star Wars, and it hurts me.
I would be rocking a more Obi-Wan-esque beard, but I've just, every once in a while you get bored. And so
now, when you say Obi-Wan-esque beard, do you mean full, luxurious Ewan McGregor Episode 3 beard, or Episode 2 pickup shots, obviously fake beard, Obi-Wan beard?
Yeah, I mean, somewhere in between.
Okay, so, somewhere in between is good.
Let me just say is that Ewan has a more luscious beard than I do, and I'm quite jealous.
I am too. And something I'm also jealous of is how easy it is for people to get in contact with the show. Just follow us on Twitter at the Jedi Masters. Follow the network, if you will, at Join Nerd Party on Twitter, the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to us, you can go to thenerdparty.com/contact and find Aggressive Negotiations and drop us a line. We do get your emails. We try to reply to them as best we can. We really, really do. Okay. So we had some fun recently talking about the Ewok movies, and it set me to thinking. Always dangerous, like Gaston.
A dangerous pastime, I'm sure.
Yes. And what I was thinking is we're in the era of the reboot, the remake, the reimagining, bringing old properties back. You know, we love to do soft reboots. We love to do remakes, all of these things. And after watching those two Ewok movies, I was suddenly struck with the idea, well, what if this isn't just a tease? What if the viewing stats encourage them to bring this property out of mothballs and try to give it a modern flair? And so I want to put it to you, just a fun topic, just to throw it at you. What would you do? Somebody comes to you and they say, Caravan of Courage, Battle for Endor, we want a third Ewok Adventure. And it's going to be straight to Disney Plus, which is the equivalent of a TV movie now.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? Hour and 45 minutes? Go.
Well, first thing I'm asking is if, they're on some sort of hallucinogenic drugs or, if they're tripping on some sort of mushrooms or way too much spice. I'm really wondering what spice from the Star Wars universe or spice from the Dune universe. I don't know. Either one. And, but the big thing that I'm thinking of that immediately jumped to my head when you asked that question was, what do we do with the Ewoks and talking? How do we get around that issue? Do we just have them use English, or are we avid subtitles the whole movie?
See, I enjoy where you're going with this because legendarily, of course, we all know what went wrong with the holiday special and arguably with Caravan of Courage of these teddy bears are just grunting. I don't know what they're saying right now. So, and of course, it's not acceptable really to have them have Wicket speaking English in Battle for Endor. It's a flaw. We talked about that. I like the idea. Let me see if you think this could fly. Do you remember The Hunt for Red October?
I absolutely do. I love that movie.
One of the greatest tricks they pull in it is they have everybody on the Russian sub speaking Russian until the camera goes in on one guy's mouth while he's talking, quoting from the Bible, I believe.
Yes.
And then while he's talking, it switches over to English. So I think, what do you think of that solution of having them speak Ewokese for the first couple of minutes, and then you have some sort of thing where halfway through it switches, and then they speak English through the rest of the thing?
I think that works. I think that's actually really smart. And so then the other question becomes, are they interacting with any humans or other aliens? And do those aliens speak Ewok, or is there some sort of translator thing involved so we can answer that question as well, so people aren't asking that question? Oh,
Well, that's an interesting question. Let's break that down. Let's break that down. We've had humans, the same human family, essentially, in both of the Ewok movies up to this point, and Sindel has left. And, I mean, we're making this decades later, so obviously we're not going to get Aubrey Miller back, and God rest the soul of Wilford Brimley. He has gone on to, the great memoriam in the sky, I believe. If he hasn't, I feel terrible for saying that, but I'm pretty sure he has. Anyway, we, have gone on an adventure with humans. Do you want to do something where it's just Ewoks versus Yuzum? And then to go along with that, do you want to have this remain a prequel, or do you want to jump past the movies and set this between the original and sequel trilogy?
What if the storyline is that, so it's past Return of the Jedi, and there are, historians and or archaeologist types that are there that are, looking through pieces of the Death Star that have fallen. Obviously, Endor would get pieces of the Death Star,
Oh, yeah.
It would have to. Not as large as what we see probably in The Rise of Skywalker, but it would definitely get some. So, so that the adventure revolves around something that happens, and they recover some sort of maybe they recover some sort of Sith artifact, or something like that. And then at the end, Luke ends up showing up. And so there is this interaction between the, and it could be that you have the archaeologists and stuff, and then you have basically grave robbers, and people are coming to make a quick buck, right? And so the Ewoks end up helping our, intrepid archaeologists, and in the end, Luke kind of shows up at the very, very end, to help out and kind of rescue everyone, because he's on his, journey across the stars, trying to learn about stuff.
Okay. I like that. Let me see if I can give it some tweaks here just to see what you think. I like this idea that you're going with. What if we end with a chase of some sort that is a tribute to the opening of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where an Ewok has this artifact that this band of burglars is going after and gets away, only to run across, if not Luke, then some other character that takes it away from them. We don't have to have it be the bad guys winning. It can be somebody benevolent. But given the flavor for it, what if it's a Mandalorian that shows up at the end as a tie-in? Do you think that's pushing it? Do you think that's going a step too far?
Interesting idea, though. No, I mean, I kind of like that idea of it belongs in a museum, and the Ewok running away and everything. I think that's fun, and I do think it's very interesting, the idea of the character that shows up, and that thought process of that it could be somebody like a Mandalorian would be interesting, or it also brings to mind the fact that you have a character like an Ahsoka or something that could show up. Heck, you could even have would be interesting if it's not too long after Return of the Jedi. I mean, you could even run into a character like a Rex, because Rex was there. That'd be kind of interesting, and like that they run into him and he says, I know what this is. I can take this and keep it safe, you know, and so the Ewok gives it to them, and you know,
And in that scene is where we switch back, and the Ewoks go back to speaking Ewokese, and we close out the show with that conceit, that full circle conceit, so that they're not speaking English at the end. And
well, and maybe it's maybe it's that. You know, I mean, you could get a character like Hera that comes in, you know, with Rex. That might be kind of interesting as well. And of course, you know, they have ties to somebody like Ahsoka. And, you know, the wink wink is like, I know somebody who will keep this safe, you know.
So what would it be? What artifact could possibly survive all the way to the fall to Endor? What possible artifact? Is it... How whimsical are we going to get? It has to be something small enough for an Ewok to carry it, but important enough that at a glance, even a casual fan can understand its importance, right?
Right.
Lightsaber is a little bit too easy, isn't it? It's a little nonsensical.
I mean, you know, I was thinking that, you know, Palpatine had lightsabers in the past, you know. We don't see him have lightsabers on him, of course, but, you know, he still has to have them, you know, and it would have made sense that he would have had a place on the Death Star. So I don't think that's crazy. And, of course, his lightsabers are very recognizable. It could also be, you know, I mean, gosh, it could be different lightsabers, too. I mean, you know, who knows if, you know, we have a... And this is the thing, like, they're literally, you know, we at least in the Rise of Skywalker, we did have the vault there, you know, and we know this idea from, like, comics like that Lando comic we had where Palpatine was very interested in, you know, Sith artifacts and stuff. So, I mean, it could be a variety of different things. It could be that helmet from the Darth Vader comic that might be kind of interesting, something like that. I mean, it could be anything in that arena where you're really kind of... You're reaching a little bit, but at the same time, it's something that could be considered dangerous.
What if we go with our conceit to give an excuse for the rebels to be there? What if we go ahead and we just embrace having it be very shortly after Return of the Jedi, and we're aware that there are rebels and Imperials on the planet, Imperials who are trying to escape, rebels who are trying to get them. So we've set up a conflict the Ewoks are in the middle of, and they can even be bemoaning the fact we thought this was going to be over when the big orb blew up, but it's still going on. And we can have sort of that commentary about how wars drag on even when they should have been over. And additionally, that gives us, with that framing, a reason for the Ewoks to be caught in a bad situation and wind up encountering rebels who can take this artifact off of their hands. So do we want to collapse it and make it easier and have it be just Imperials who are searching for this and the rebels are who they end up with? Or do we want to introduce this third party of pirates?
Remember in the episodes where we're at the temple on Lothal, you know, we have that Imperial archaeologist, right?
Yes.
What if we had a character similar to that, and maybe the conceit could be the fact that, you know, he had been on the Death Star, he had been down on the planet. Here's an even better idea. It's not even just the Death Star. Because the shield generator is there protecting them, there's also one of Palpatine's hidden outposts there, maybe, right? So there you've got that, and so it becomes this thing where you have these Imperials who are there, and they're trying to stay hidden and everything from the rebels who are searching the planet, you know, to make sure it's clean of the Empire before they leave, because they don't want to leave Imperials there, you know, that the Ewoks have to deal with. So that might be really interesting.
We start with a different tribe of Ewoks who meets up with our hero Ewoks that we recognize from the movies, and they join together and move the plot along, so that we are starting in a different part of the planet and establishing this place that you're talking about with a different tribe of Ewoks, because it's not just one tribe of Ewoks. You know what? Let me ask that question. I don't think anybody's ever really postulated this, but like, are we supposed to believe there's just one sort of unified global tribe of Ewoks? I never really took it that way. I took it as the Ewoks were localized, but do you think there are different tribes? Because like the American Indians across the North American continent, and even the South American continent too, right? Yep. They, the Cherokee were different from the Sioux, were different from all of the different tribes and everything, but we would still regard them in that sort of monolithic mindset. So, yeah, did you ever think about that in terms of like there being different tribes of Ewoks?
No, but I think that's really interesting. And obviously, it becomes one of those things where then, 1/3 of the way through, we kind of introduce the Ewoks that we're used to with Wicket and everything, which is great. But this way, it starts off in a different place. I really like that. And then it becomes that thing. And this is where I think we could kind of go back maybe to that original idea, is that Luke is the one who shows up at the end, because if it's something this important, he's still probably in the area, and maybe he senses, right? And again, it's one of those, it would be more of the Mandalorian style show up of Luke, where it's the wink, wink, the green lightsaber, that kind of thing. And I think that plays into, a nice little story, because again, we know from, canon materials and everything, Luke really starting to do searching and everything after the Return of the Jedi, and, trying to understand the ramifications, of the Jedi and who he is and all that stuff, which wink wink kind of plays in a little bit to something we're going to talk about here very soon, which is the Heart of the Jedi book. But so just a little plug for that. So I think this is a good idea in that sense. Like, this to me sounds actually exciting, and part of that I think is because, one of the things that I don't love per se about the Ewok movies is that they don't really fit in the Star Wars universe, except for like as the feeling of like stories you might be told, quote unquote. But this actually feels like it fits within the Star Wars universe, and it could actually be something that is really fun, and also kind of adds to. You get cute teddy bears again, right? Which everybody loves the Ewoks, but at the same time, you could do something that's really neat and kind of create a very fun canon story.
Okay, so we're going to presume that we are told to set it up for a sequel, leave it open. And so obviously we need to end it in a place where if we have a sequel idea, it ties in. So what is your sequel idea? And do you tie it in at the end? Or do you have it as a stinger, like we got the pleasant surprise of the Book of Boba Fett?
I'm trying to think of what would be the way to kind of end this that would bring you back to Endor. Or is it more of a thing that we're trying to then kind of branch out in the sense that, like the Book of Fett does, where it's like it's not going to necessarily be based about the Mandalorian. We're going to be focusing on something else now, So what would be our next focus? And I think that's the big question there that would be really interesting. And then, do you give somebody like a Wicket type character, something like that, the reason to go off with somebody on a journey, possibly?
See, I'm thinking, especially because we've introduced this idea of an artifact, and that we know the Ewoks believe in magic. We know that they have a medicine man, and I've always Logray was always one of my favorite action figures as a kid growing up. What if we did, and this is an obvious play on Book of Boba Fett, The Legend of Logray, and instead of following Wicket, which is somewhat expected, have the sequel be Logray tapping into the Force. We find out there was another artifact or piece of an artifact that Logray has tapped into, and we use that as our springboard for whatever adversarial thing is going to happen in the next movie, whether it calls out to a lost Sith acolyte or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then the story that would be next would be, what if we had our first Ewok Jedi? Logray becomes the first Ewok Jedi.
Now, see, I am on board with that, and with that, that's why I would say with this one, we have it Hera and Rex, somebody like that they turn the artifact over to. That's when Luke comes in. Is Logray opens up the doorway, finds his own Force potential, and Luke shows up at the end to say, hey, I sensed you. Come on, let's go. I'm starting. Because think about the direction, especially in a post-Mandalorian world, where we know Grogu is going there, and then we get Logray, and we get a totally different picture of the type of Jedi Luke is assembling.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us a much broader, I think a much more interesting and diverse look at all of this, because even though we don't get their helmets off or anything like that, like the Knights of Ren, right? They're all basically like bipedal humanoids that they look like people walking around. We know that Kylo Ren as a human was one of the Jedi, and so it sort of reinforces this idea of Jedi human, which Lucas even made a point to get as away from as he could in the prequels and have more alien species in there. So I think that would be much more interesting to have that, because then we're opening the door. Grogu in The Mandalorian, Logray in these Ewok adventures. And the thing is, what I love is I think this speaks to what the underlying strength, regardless of whether they were successful in communicating it and pulling it off overall, the underlying strength of these Ewok Adventure movies is the fact that they can exist. They do plug in. You can find a way to plug them in if you just use a little bit of your imagination, and I think, in a sense, redeems them, makes them modern.
Right. Well, and it, kind of reminds me of an important lesson from VeggieTales from Junior Asparagus, which is little guys can do big things too.
There you go.
And isn't that kind of an important message? Yoda even says, "Judge me by my size, do you?" And so, I think I do. I just really think this is a fun idea, and it gives you the opportunity to again play in the universe in a very, I think, whimsical way, and at the same time be able to then tie back into a lot of really interesting things. And I would say, I think the best way to do this is through animation. Because I think live action is a little bit too difficult to pull off these days. And what would be fun is for them to be able to find a very unique and interesting animation style to do this in, to kind of set it apart from all the other Star Wars animation we've gotten. And then it makes much easier then to have a character like Luke show up, and you're not having to worry about de-aging Mark Hamill for a ridiculous expense. And at the same time, you still get to enjoy having him there much more than you could if you were having to de-age every scene he's in, and have the body double and everything that you're mapping the face on if there's any action and, all of that stuff. I think that would make it much, much easier. And, obviously Star Wars animation has a great track record, of being very successful. So, this could be fun to where you're doing like an hour and a half animated movie and maybe it's a 3-part arc.
Yeah. My gosh. I mean, think about this. This was, I was tossing this idea out, no lie, just as a couple of yucks, just to say, oh, haha, we're going to make a sequel to the Ewok movies, which, people don't hold in the highest regard overall. And we've found a way to bring them into the modern day. I love this. I absolutely love this. And I think your idea of animation works perfectly. It makes perfect sense. And I also think that it winds up being, especially post-2020, catastrophe proof. You can continue working on an animated show
Absolutely
in a situation, whatever it is. So long as you have a good internet connection, everybody can collaborate. So bring it on. I'm a big proponent of as much Lucasfilm animation as they want to throw at us. I think it's a terrific idea and a terrific solution, especially with Bad Batch proving how cinematic everything can be. I mean, just where they've come just since the beginning of the Clone Wars to now is stunning. And so I think you could make a truly magnificent series with animation in this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really helps with this is that, again, we're finding a fun way to be able to kind of tap into and the legacy of these features that they did, but at the same time, I think improve in the sense that we're gonna really tie them into the rest of the universe and make it feel more cohesive, which I think is a huge plus. And again, I think animation really frees you then, even though animation, obviously, we know they have to create the assets and everything. It's expensive too, but this gives you much more freedom in then what you can do as to what you can't do. And I think it would be a lot of fun. So I would, as silly as the idea is we came up with in the first place of like, let's make a sequel to the Ewok films, like, this sounds like pretty decent. I'm actually really interested to see what other people who happen to listen to the episode think.
I agree. And again, we would love to hear from you at the Jedi Masters on Twitter, or you can reach out to us via thenerdparty.com/contact, or Matt, they can track you down online. And where can they find you out and about?
Yeah, you could find me all over the place on social media under MattRushing02. I did just wrap up here on the network Owl Post with Drea Kaufman, where we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, and that was really fun. Over on the TFM network, I'm doing a few shows. One's called the 602 Club, and we're talking about all of the fandoms that we love. We really enjoy diving into pretty much anything geekdom-wise, and so if you love Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, all that stuff, we're in there. And then, of course, you could see in that same feed, John and I do a show called Snyder Cuts, where we've talked through everything that Zack Snyder's directed, which has been a lot of fun as we kind of went through that series with Justice League, his Justice League coming out this year, and, of course, his Army of the Dead as well. Also, you can find me doing Literary Treks in the Orb. Over there. Literary Treks about the books and the comics of Star Trek, and The Orb is about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But John, where can people find you?
Oh, nobody wants to actually find me, but I'm hiding out on Endor on their social media networks as Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE. I encourage everybody, let's connect over on Letterboxd. I have a lot of fun over there delivering pithy movie reviews of what is now my legendary habit of watching terrible movies, in a sense, so you don't have to. So I let you know what they're all about. And you can find me right here on the network, co-hosting House Lights, which is a series where we examine different directors and their entire body of work from start to finish. And like Matt said, you can find me occasionally appearing over on 602 Club, and you can find me over on Snyder Cuts. And frankly, I think there are probably a lot of people that would like to find a way to shut me up. And speaking of which, I have a little nasty gram from Master Yoda here that I am once again late for kitchen duty. So I think it is time to close these negotiations.
John, Negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.